There's a cheapskate epidemic in America. And in this video, we're going to go over why being a cheapskate can actually make you poor and some tweaks that you can make to change your mindset around this. I'm Jeff Winberg, founder of CommonwealthToday.com, where we teach next generation financial education to get your money working for you instead of you working for your money. If you're new to the channel, make sure to click the subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it to get notified when we publish new videos. Part of the American culture is to get things as cheaply as possible. You know, when you think about any goods that you buy, how much does it cost? It's always about cost, and you want that cost to be as low as possible. That's what we're taught, you know, from an early age. And we don't think about who's making it, the quality that's put into it, the materials it's made out of. We just think, how fast and how cheap can I get it? And this is part of, you know, what we're taught as kids as well, as like we're taught consumerism in America. You know, as soon as we can pay attention to that kind of stuff. Like if you watch any kind of cartoons with young kids, like all of the commercials are just marketed towards little kids. So they're training them to want to buy these things that are advertised on TV, and that just continues all the way up until, you know, like we leave the planet. In fact, if you're an entrepreneur or you've run any kind of business, a lot of times it's harder to create a business that makes things in the United States because the workforce is so expensive, the materials are more expensive, everything is more expensive when you're trying to make it in the USA than it is to just outsource to China or India or wherever you outsource to. Some things that make sense for, other things, you know, maybe it doesn't, but that mindset really sets us up to just be in a place where it ends up costing us more money a lot of times by buying the cheap things than it does if you would just buy a high quality one from the get-go. It's mainly because everybody's just focused on cheap instead of quality. And as an example, this like really played a big part in my wife and I's life as we were buying some kitchen supplies. We needed some cookie sheets, so we went to Target and just got the cheapest ones we could find. And it was like, okay, yeah, these look cheap, but they were like $1. Okay, cool, let's try them out. We used them like twice. They rusted, warped, and basically had to throw them away and then go buy another one. And you know, done that across the board on many different things like knives, anything like that we needed. It was always just cheap. Then we like stopped for a second. We were like, wait a sec, let's look at some more expensive ones just to see like what the quality difference is like. And we ended up getting some that were, I mean, they're not like that expensive. They're just cookie sheets. So maybe like $9, $10. I don't even know, to be honest, but they were more expensive than the super cheap ones we got. And we use them every day. Like I can't think of a day that we haven't used those cookie sheets since we got them, because it's actually like enjoyable to use them because they're so nice, they work so well, and they don't rust, they don't have things stick to them, all that kind of stuff. And this kind of was like it blew our minds a little bit because we spent more on them and we've used them more, we've enjoyed them more, and they're still around like maybe a year or two later, whereas the ones that we initially got have been like rusted and thrown out already. So that long example is just one scenario where we found that buying a little bit more expensive but way higher quality item actually led to it costing less over the long run, because we'll be able to use those for many years to come. Now, there's two levels to this whole like being a cheapskate actually makes you more poor. There is the actual money that's involved and the mindset. So you can kind of see both in the story that I just highlighted. The money that was spent on the cheap cookie sheets was actually more over the long run than if we would have just originally bought the more expensive, higher quality items. Those last longer, they don't have to be replaced as often. So you can see that, yeah, it may be upfront, it's a little bit of a higher cost, but it wasn't even that much more. We got a higher quality item that's gonna like take care of itself for a long time. So we're never gonna have to reinvest in those. Whereas if we bought the cheap ones, we're going to have to keep reinvesting because they're going to wear out much faster. So in that scenario, buying the cheapest option actually contributed to us spending more money. Thus, if you want to look at it this way, being poor, even though, you know, like it wasn't like breaking the bank. But if you look at that across the board, that's typically why you end up spending more on things, because you buy the cheap option first instead of taking a second and looking at what is the opportunity cost of buying the cheap one versus a little bit more expensive but higher quality item. And that is actually the second aspect of this, is the mindset portion. That's probably bigger than the money thing, is when you think about like, oh, I got to get the cheapest one, I got to get the cheapest one, I got to get the cheapest one, that really like contributes to a sense of lack. and it doesn't really do much for the feeling of abundance and the feeling of valuing things of quality. It's more just like, I don't care, I just want it cheap because I don't want to spend the money, I don't have enough money. It really just puts you in a negative space. Now, I'm not saying go out and buy the most expensive thing just because that's what you should do. You know, I think looking at, okay, where on the scale of prices is my sweet spot for quality and pricing. On this channel, we focus a lot on abundance and attracting more money, and focusing on price and just not spending money actually does the opposite of that. Money is just energy, and energy really likes to move and go out and do things. Otherwise, it kind of gets stagnant. And by focusing on cheap, 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 pay less, pay less, pay less, what do you think that's actually bringing back to you? It's like you're putting it out there that like maybe you're thinking like, man, I want more money, but your actions and your energy are actually speaking louder than your words. They're saying like cheap, cheap, cheap. So the universe or law of attraction or whatever you follow, that's going to bring that same thing that you're putting out there back, which is cheap, not enough money, lack of money, spend less money, etc. Another example, if you're cheap with a tip, why would somebody want to give you a big tip? If you're cheap with a gift, why would somebody want to give you a good gift? If you're cheap on things that you're spending your money on and you come at it with that kind of mentality, why would it be any different for something that's coming back to you? Whereas if you're, focused on abundance and giving quality items or buying quality items, that's putting a different vibe out there. If you're focused on, like, hey, I spent this money, it's helping these people that I purchased it from, it's helping them to help other people, like you can follow that down the road, and then that actually comes back to you as well, because again, if you give a big tip, definitely somebody would want to tip you back. If you give a good gift, somebody's going to want to give you a good gift back. It's just reciprocity. If you put out there good stuff's going to come back. If you put out there bad stuff, or maybe just like not positive things, those things are going to come back to you. And of course, I'm speaking in figurative terms of the universe or whatever you want to call it, but that's like typically how it works. And by being cheap and focusing on the lowest price possible, that's what you're putting out there, that's what you're going to get back. And since we're here to try and increase the amount of money and get it working for us, that's just a little shift that I would definitely recommend you look at, is not so much on price, but focus on quality. Because if you buy a quality item that maybe is a little bit more expensive, in the long run, it's going to save you money because you're spending less over time. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down, let us know, because that also helps us decide what kind of content to make in the future. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to get notified when we publish new videos. And finally, a final favor, if you know somebody that would like this video, please share it with them, because we're here to teach everybody we can about next generation financial education to get our money working for us instead of us working for your money. I'm Jeff Winberg, and we'll see you next time. Take care.